everyone. I am Kristyn, and I am a second-year CAS student. I will be graduating in August. And I'm talking about developing and facilitating anti-oppression workshops at the University Library. So this past summer, I was talking with my close friend about the incident that happened with Sandra Bland, and she pointed out to me that while it was great that we were having this conversation, that essentially I kind of needed to have these conversations in predominantly white spaces and communities. And that's what kind of pushed me to start these. So while the racial demographics haven't changed much in the field, despite the fact that we have diversity initiatives, we have diversity committees, we have diversity mission statements, and a large part of that is that even though it's kind of opened up the door to have these conversations, oftentimes it focuses a lot on representation, but it doesn't really, it's more like a checklist, something to do, but it doesn't really necessarily get at the structure. So the purpose of the anti-oppression workshops is really to move the conversation from just focusing on representation and even inclusion, but to really get at the racist, sexist structures that are marginalizing people of color in our fields. So the series that is happening at the University Library now is consisted of 3 workshops. The first one is about differentiating between diversity training and anti-oppression training. And the big difference is that we're looking at social groups that have institutional power. And so part of the anti-oppressive framework is about taking responsibility, as an individual, but also as a group. The second workshop is about intersectionality, which is a theory that was started by Kimberly Crenshaw. So she was looking at really, when we talk about Black women, we're not just looking at Black people, we're not just looking at women, we're looking at Black women. So essentially that the more marginalized identities that you have, oppression kind of compounds. And so it's a way for us to look at, for example, right, I'm a white cis woman, I have privilege as a white person, but I also have, I deal with marginalization and oppression as a woman. But that doesn't mean I don't have privilege as a white person. The third and final workshop is anti-racist librarianship. And, sorry, I'm a little bit nervous. It is really focusing on how can we move from awareness to action. So part of this is talking about white fragility, what is actually kind of preventing us from having these conversations, and how can we kind of develop more muscle to actually engage in this difficult work. Allyship, and also how can we actually put systems of accountability in place within our institutions? How can we be accountable to people of color that we're working with? They're offered twice. So the next one is Wednesday, April 13th at 10 at the library 106. The second one is on Thursday, April 14th at Granger Commons at 2 p.m. So if you haven't been able to check out either of the first 2, I invite you to come to this one. And I want to actually go over some of the reflections that things that I've experienced thus far, because I facilitated 2 of them. So the first one is that I met some resistance through the process of actually getting these in place with using an anti-oppressive framework and anti-oppressive language. There was, and I really kind of met some with resistance because people wanted me to kind of stick with this diversity language. And so, I've really had to advocate for why we actually need to use the word anti-oppression. The other, and I would say really bigger reflection that I've noticed is that part of white supremacy culture is perfectionism. And a lot of times that prevents us from actually having these conversations. So for me, going in the public, being in front of people has really made me kind of have to work through some of these, fears that I've had, or being afraid that if I say something that's wrong, being embarrassed. And so just really, knowing that if I say something that offends someone or hurts someone, that I have the ability to apologize, and that actually shouldn't prevent me from doing the work. That's all.